Welcome to Ashley on CBD, your one-stop podcast where we drop the truth on all things CBD and maybe some pop culture too. Stick around as we delve deep into the practical health benefits of CBD for you.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for listening. Today's episode, as always, is brought to you by Magic Immunity, available at packedwithlife.com. What could be more important in today's world than having a strong immune system? Probably nothing. But how do you do that? Diet, exercise? Well, no kidding. But what I've recently started doing is drinking Magic Immunity. Number one, it tastes great, and it's loaded with healthy nutrients called adaptogens, including 4 essential mushrooms, reishi, lion's mane, chaga, and cordyceps. No, not the magic kind, you guys. Come on. Reishi, lion's mane, chaga, and cordyceps are great for you. Highly nutritious and very adept at boosting your immune system. So give Magic Immunity a try at packedwithlife.com. Today's episode features Dr. Lindsey Elmore, and we'll be talking about immunity and how cannabis and CBD can impact immunity. Dr. Elmore has explored her own challenges, and through that she's found Chinese medicine as well as yoga and meditation, and obviously cannabis and CBD, and we'll talk about that. Dr. Elmore is also a pharmacist, so it'll be very interesting to talk to her in terms of how CBD, cannabis might compare or be used in conjunction with or as alternatives to traditional drugs. So hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you. Hi, good morning, Dr. Elmore. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to talk to you. I've been excited about this conversation, talking to an actual pharmacist here today, and that expertise is something that I'm very intrigued by. As you may or may not know, I've been in the CBD game for about 5 years and had a lot of good times with Charlotte's Web in the early days and talked to a lot of patients. And there was always questions about this, right? Like, what are drug interactions? What are alternatives? What's the safety protocol? All of that kind of stuff. So I know that there's a lot about you in general that's more than just a pharmacist. So, before we kind of dive into that, because I think that's part of what makes you really unique and helpful to folks, tell us a little bit about your background and all the other things that you're working on, and then we can kind of get into some more of the details around cannabis and CBD.
Absolutely. So I am a chemist and a pharmacist. I have a bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and then a doctorate in pharmacy from University of California, San Francisco. I did 2 years of postdoctoral residency where I specialized in primary care, the disease, chronic disease, diabetes, pain, inflammation, all kinds of disorders that a lot of people have. Then I became very frustrated with the practice of pharmacy because I got to this point where I recognized patients are just coming in and getting meds and getting more meds and getting more meds and not getting any better. And so I really wanted to craft a practice that empowered patients to become their own doctor in a way. And so I discovered essential oils, fell in love with them, became a yoga instructor, started doing plant-based cleanses. And so now I have evolved into a total of 5 brands. So I have my personal pharmacy practice. I have my podcast, The Lindsey Elmore Show, that I work on. My vegan, gluten-free Foodstagram and food blog is called Clean Slate Cleanse. I also help other health and wellness entrepreneurs to understand their brand through something called Brand Strategies Lab. And then I also have an essential oil education platform based around one specific company's products called Weil Ed Club. So work on a lot and do a lot, and have recently started really teaching a lot more about CBD since it's been so in demand since all of the legal and regulatory changes happened back in 2019. So that's a little bit about me, crash course.
So I'm intrigued, like, why are you so open to these things? Like most folks, you think, go through traditional pharmacy schools and things like that. They're they're taught a certain protocol and an approach, and they kind of stick to that. It seems like you're much more open-minded and holistic in what you're thinking about and what you're practicing. So how did that happen? Is it just something that's always been with you, or was there a catalyst event in your life, or I'm total off base?
When I was in pharmacy school, I tore my ACL. And when you tear your ACL, you get locked out in a leg brace for 6 weeks, 12 weeks. And so when you're in the leg brace, your knee joint can't bend like it's used to bending. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up walking in a way where I would hike my hip every single day. And I ended up one day realizing that I couldn't sit on both of my sitting bones, that I was like all wonky and off to the side. That landed me in the chiropractor's office. I mentioned to the chiropractor, hey doc, I haven't slept in a month and I feel like I may die. And she said, well, you should go to the acupuncturist. And the acupuncturist really introduced me to the concepts that Western medicine doesn't do well. You know, Western medicine is amazing at critical care. If you are really, really sick, you want to be in an American healthcare institution. But if you are pre-diabetic, the Western institutions do relatively little to help you to prevent the progression to outright diabetes. So when I started learning a little bit more about Chinese medicine, Chinese herbs, that opened my eyes to understanding more about meditative practices. My grandmother, all the way back in like the 60s, was taking meditation classes and taught me how to meditate as a child. And I just became more serious. I know. She taught me how to meditate and how to type, two things that still to this day serve me very well. And then I became that wacky pharmacist who really knew more about herbs and supplements and interactions with medications. Pharmacists knew that they could come to me and say, my patient just brought in this random bottle. Like, what do I tell them about it? Then it sounds crazy, but my life changed in an instant when I discovered essential oils. I sat in my living room floor and was like pouring them on my head and diffusing them, and was just, I knew right then and there that my life would change. And so I left the practice of pharmacy, went to work for an essential oil company for a while, ended up then transitioning to becoming an entrepreneur. I am now currently in training to become a certified practitioner with the Institute of Functional Medicine. So furthering my education, I've been certified in trauma release techniques. As I mentioned, I'm a yoga instructor. And so it has just grown and grown. And it's like the more you learn about holistic medicine, the more you understand that there is only one cause of disease. And all we have to do as humans is just address that one thing. Now, it's hard and it's multiplicative what you have to do to get down to curing the root cause. But if you're not dealing with inflammation and oxidative stress in your body, you can have any number of diseases. And so that's what I want to help people to do, is change their diet so that they calm down the inflammation, learn to meditate so that they calm down the inflammation, advocate for environmental policies that reduce our toxic burden in our environment to reduce our inflammation. So you really get down to the basics. And that's where I live and practice, is just with the basics. Stop doing the toxic stuff you shouldn't be doing. Eliminate as many toxins that you can't avoid. Eat right. Live a stress-free life. Drink clean water. Move your body and get out of toxic relationships. It really is that simple. It's just hard to put it into practice.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, but I have this perspective that it's so hard to put it into practice a lot because of the programming that we're given as we are raised, right? I mean, there's a mentality to just take a pill. I just want the solution. or I don't really want to pay that extra dollar for that organic produce, right? I just want to save the money because I want to go do something else with it. But it's those choices, is it not, that really where all this whole thing starts?
So, if you've read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, he's writing towards entrepreneurs. And so he says, people think that business just manifests overnight and that somebody is just like, poof, an instant success. That's not true. What makes businesses successful is the willingness to show up and do the mundane crap day in and day out, over and over again, that it takes to run a company. The same is true for your body. Sit back and ask yourself right now, how long did it take you to get into this physical condition that you are currently sitting in right now? What makes you think that going to the gym one time or eating, even let's say you do it for a month, you're still going to be in your same physical body? And so I think that we need to understand that health is not something that you can just flip a switch and make it work. It's, I work with patients a lot of the time, and they're coming to me and they're like, I'm in pain. I've got this autoimmune disorder. But what they then start telling me is that their marriage is falling apart, that their husband cheated on them, that they hate being in their home. Well, until that gets fixed, until the toxic burden stops the inflammatory process, you're never going to break down the cycles of disease. And so I think we have to understand that health is a series of choices that play out every single day. It's not something where you can it's not name it, blame it, and tame it, as we say in functional medicine. Western medicine is all about, we name something, we call it diabetes, we blame it for the fact that your foot is numb because you don't have circulation. And then we tame it with metformin and insulin and medications, when we don't ever take the step back and go, wow, why don't we turn off the faucet of sugar and fat and cholesterol and stress that's leading to the diabetes in the first place? We need to look way further upstream and get the mentality of, it's garbage in, garbage out. Mm-hmm. If we put garbage in, we're going to get garbage out. And then we're going to say, well, the garbage collector will come and just move it. Well, that only can take place for so long. And I understand that there are people who say, I really just can't afford to eat right. But if you don't afford to eat right, eventually you're going to afford having a heart attack or
can't afford not to.
Exactly. And so, I really think, and I wish our food policy was different in this country, because should be no reason that organic food is out of reach for average people. There should not be the problem of food deserts in the richest country in the world. I truly believe that everyone deserves access to healthy food, and that the premium price tags should really be put on the standard American diet foods that are making us sick and keeping us sick.
Well, I think I agree. And I think it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing too, because, I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I have no problems having access to the most wonderful foods around, right? But that's the reason that is because there's more people here who are interested in that and who have taken accountability for their choices. And there's a demand then for that food. My family, and I spent most of my life in Indiana. When we go there, it's difficult to find the right foods. I mean, we can find them, but it's challenging. You have to go to multiple places, and they don't always have everything in stock. And it's simply because there's not a demand. I believe if there was more people that had the awareness, if there were more people that had the awareness that you're talking about and that I'm referring to, that the demand would be higher and therefore the prices would go down because there would be more people producing it.
Well, and we also need to stop subsidizing the
Corn?
big major. We need to stop subsidizing agriculture because, you think about corn and soybeans, and most of the corn and soybeans that are being grown are not even edible out of the field. So like the irony of an Iowa corn farmer who can't feed his family at the end of the day is not lost on me. And there's no reason for us to subsidize corn and soy other than the insatiable desire for meat, because most of the corn and the soy and the wheat that is grown is actually not fed to humans. It's fed to livestock, which is a crying shame, because in my understanding of food, consumption of a plant-based diet is a better way, at least for the vast majority of human beings, not a heavy meat-based diet. So everybody who's eating keto out there, don't, I still love you. But
I was just going to say, I agree with about everything you're saying, but man, I'm a carnivore, right? So,
again, it's programming. We're programmed to think that we need meat. We're programmed to think these things, but it is undeniably delicious, no doubt.
It's just the protein for me. I find that it's hard when I eat, because I don't, my daughter is actually a vegetarian, and we eat very, very healthily because my wife is just a wonderful cook and very aware around nutrition. But the meat dimension of protein and how I feel, like it's just, that's more, because I'm open to getting out of the programming, you know what I mean? But my physical feelings personally, when I eat and lay off the meat and try to get protein other ways, it just doesn't, I don't feel as good.
Then that is an intuitive eating, which is valuable. It's a mindfulness around what you are eating. However, we do know very clearly that people who are eating a plant-based diet are not at risk for being protein underfed.
True.
And so it's not that you're saying I'm actually lacking protein. What you're saying is my mind loves the experience of eating food, which is part of the experience of eating food. And so we can't deny that that is an important piece of the equation. So listen, it's just like meditation. Eating should be a part of a meditation and mindfulness practice. And so if you're able to sit down with your grass-fed steak and your, green beans and all of the good things and feel amazing about what you have just given your body as nutrition and fuel, great, really great. I love the writing of Janine Roth, who says it's not what we eat that determines our health. It's how we eat it. And we go through this a lot in the Clean Slate Cleanse, because I think a lot of times people go on cleanses and they're like, I'm hardcore. I'm only drinking smoothies and juices for like 4 weeks. But if you don't actually change the way your mind is thinking about food and you immediately revert to your destructive standard American diet, we didn't make the shift that we needed to make. So if you're wanting to take a moment to be more mindful about what you're eating, and if you're someone who is, earthy, crunchy, and granola and eats hemp seeds and kale all day long, and all of a sudden you're in a situation where you're getting a greasy slab of hamburger and you're like, I am going to eat this or starve, at least be mindful about it. Don't beat yourself up because you're having a bad meal. There are no bad foods. There is only the intention and the soulfulness and the spirit that you can put into the food on your plate.
So I agree with you. So how do you, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was the immune system and immunity support, and, in particular cannabis and CBD. But I'm assuming all this connects in, right? I mean, nutrition, CBD, all of that is powering that immune system.
Absolutely. So if you think about the immune system and our endocannabinoids, so CBD, THC, and other cannabinoids that exist within hemp and marijuana, those are exocannabinoids. But we have our own endocannabinoid system that is within us all of the time. We have two primary, what are called ligands. And so if you think about a lock and a key, the way that the body kind of works is there's a lock that's a receptor and a key has to come in. So the key that kind of turns on the receptor is called a ligand. We have two primary endocannabinoids. There is anandamide, which is Sanskrit for, comes from the Sanskrit ananda, which means internal bliss. And then there is 2-arachidinyl glycerol. And those two endocannabinoids have very diverse actions throughout our immune systems. They're found in a wide variety of immune cells like monocytes and basophils and lymphocytes and macrophages, which macrophages are like the trash trucks of your body. And they are also found in, so throughout the body, there are cannabinoid receptors where these ligands, so remember the lock comes in, so there's these, the lock piece, the receptors are widely distributed throughout the body. We have two cannabinoid receptors. CB1 is primarily in our central nervous system and is responsible for the euphoric effects, the bliss, the internal bliss that comes from cannabinoids. We also have the CB2 receptor, which is much more widely distributed throughout our body. It is very widely distributed throughout the immune system, including in your lymph nodes, on T cells, on B cells, on all kinds of cells. And so when you think about cannabinoids coming into the body, we have tetrahydrocannabinol, which hits our CB1 receptors that are in the central nervous system that cause us to have that euphoric experience, but also provides pain killing and appetite stimulating effects. There is also cannabidiol, which cannabidiol is a phytocannabinoid which primarily hits our CB2 receptors. It has been approved as a medication throughout the world as a brand name nabiximols, which helps to relieve spasticity in the body. So people who have multiple sclerosis, they tend to get very spastic as well as very stiff. Cannabidiol can help with that. Cannabidiol is also used to relieve cancer pain and to reduce the amount of opioids that people need, because opioids are extraordinarily addictive and cause a lot of morbidity.
Terrible.
And so cannabidiol is also brand name approved as an anti-epileptic, and it also helps to alleviate marijuana withdrawal. And so within the immune system, we see that the actions of our cannabinoids, both phytocannabinoids and endocannabinoids, go throughout the whole body, helping to reduce inflammation, to calm down the twitchy effects of the immune system. When the immune system is inflamed, it becomes panicked and it's like, oh no, I got to react to that over there. And the endocannabinoid system with the anandamide, the arachidinyl glycerol, THC, and CBD help to tone those systems down throughout the lymphatic system, the gastrointestinal system, on the skin, in the eyes, on the bones, really throughout the entire body.
Wow. No, that's great explanation. Thank you for the detail on that. That's it's really helpful to understand it. Just given your pharmacological background, how does that relate to, let's say, an alternative painkiller? Like you mentioned, referred to opioids, right? Do they come into the same receptors?
No.
No.
So opioids hit the opioid receptors. So you're taking me back to my pharmacology days. So there's mu opioid receptors, delta opioid receptors, and a couple of other opioid receptors. And we do have endogenous opioids in our body that can help us when we have experiences with chronic pain. But the way that cannabis works more is that when medical cannabis gets into the body, it acts as a cannabinol, a CB receptor agonist. It turns it on. So it's not engaging with your opioid receptors, it's engaging with your cannabinoid receptors. And at these cannabinoid receptors, we have anti-nociceptive effects. So stopping the perception of pain is what that means.
Okay.
And then there's also hyperalgic effects, which is that you know how it is. Once you're in pain and then you get into a little bit more pain, it becomes like this wind up that's hard to deal with. It also can modulate when the brain gets a signal of you're in pain. So it modulates those nociceptive thresholds, and it also has analgesic effects directly, as well as having broad effects on the immune system, which helps to heal the underlying inflammation so that pain doesn't have to exist.
Makes sense. Like in my experience, I had a really bad accident, and to have a couple of plates in my head here and some screws holding it back together, and a lifetime of migraines and nerve pain and all kinds of stuff. But I used to use THC to kind of numb the pain. When the pain would come on, or the headache or whatever it was, I was a user of THC to kind of numb it. Worked well for me, but it didn't. The pain was constantly present. It was there every day in some way. Came to Colorado, discovered CBD, started adding that into my routine. All of a sudden, it starts to go away. And my own non-medical training, I could tell that there's something healing happening, because the frequency of these issues just started going, where they'd always been there. I'd used THC for, 15 years. Or more, in the same way, and then come here and add CBD and keep using THC the same way I always have. But all of a sudden, the frequency of these things start to go away. And my own, my layman's terms explanation is that it had to be healing that inflammation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason that humans have used marijuana for 5,000 years. I remember 2 years ago when the CBD the farm bill passed, and everybody's like, CBD for everyone. And I'm like, y'all, we've been using CBD for millennia. And so the use of marijuana is an ancient practice. Well, the way that evolution works is anything that's not giving us benefit, we get rid of it. If marijuana did not have medicinal effects in humans, we would all be sitting around, our ancestors would have been sitting around the campfire going like, remember John when he smoked that plant and died? Let's not do that. We would have this perception like we do with poisonous mushrooms, where it's like, okay, yeah, that exists, but we got to stay away from that. So nature gave us plenty of medicines that not only help to modulate inflammatory processes, but I'm willing to guess if you have screws in your head and plates and all of the things, you had some sort of traumatic experience that led to that happening. And in general, there is 99.9% of the time some kind of emotional root cause that if you're not dealing with the emotion of it all, you're never going to get to the inflammation that is the resultant. And so, I think
it's an excellent point. Excellent point.
Thank you. Yeah. I think what's really important, you cannot just show up and say, I'm in pain, what do I do? Without taking that step back and asking, one of the most quintessential questions of functional medicine, which is, when is the last time you felt good? Because a lot of us have that in our heads, that never felt good since this happened. You know, I've healed, I've recovered, but when I tore my ACL, that was a trauma in my life that will always be with me.
Yep.
It will always be in me and within me. And that is one of those critical moments where it was like, okay, well, it has the ability to never feel well again. You know, that could have sent me into a downward spiral, into opioid misuse, into chronically seeking being within the healthcare system. Or you can use it as a catalyst to say, how do I come out better on the other side? How do I fall forward? You know, we all get setbacks, but how do we say, well, I'm going to let this setback make me better in the future, in the now. I'm going to accept this now and become better with it.
Yeah, totally. And that's a mindset and an attitude that you're right. It starts with the individual. And in my example, I have to say that you're right. I mean, that it changed my life. You know, I kind of look back on it, and it occurred at a time in my life where, you know, I could have really gone down a couple of different paths. And, you know, I think in a lot of ways, my accident was a blessing because it got my attention, and it allowed me to then focus on the path that I really needed to be on. You know, and so that's a hard thing to say, because, you know, bad things happen, and, you know, you don't want to just say that they're always blessings, but, you know, in this case, I really do. It changed my life in a very good way. And I think that's why, you know, as I moved on over the years, and then when I was introduced to CBD, and I was also at a more point where I was even more open to getting better. Right. And so I started looking at meditation. I started getting into other things, and really working on some of the emotional things that you refer to. Right. And so all of it, at the end of the day, yeah, CBD played a major role, but it was a lot of things happening in my experience that kind of led to this overall outcome.
Well, and I think, you know, if we think of the advice of Eckhart Tolle, who is just a brilliant thinker, he says, look, you can look at situations in your life and label them as good or bad, but that's just your mind talking. It's not good or bad. It just is. It just is. And so I may look at that skiing accident and go, well, that was a really bad thing that happened to me. It's not bad. That's just the perception of it.
Right.
And I can allow that to stress me out. Like, why me? Why did this happen to me? But as Eckhart Tolle says, stress is nothing more than wanting the present moment to be something that it is not. And if you're constantly just wanting the present moment to be something that it is not, you are going to live an absolutely miserable life. And I think that 2020 has been a banner year for wanting the present moment to be something that it is not. So we all experience stress. We all do. But it's what it's do you let your mind just live in that stress, dwell on that stress? Or do you just go, stress, there it was, there it went, oh, it's gone? You know, it's one thing to be in stress because you need to be. You know, if your kid is about to run into oncoming traffic, it's probably a good time to have some mild panic. But if waking up in the morning stresses you out, and if your drive to work stresses you out, and if what you eat stresses you out, and if you're sitting on social media all day bickering with people who you will never change their minds, and it's stressing you out, what are you doing? Why are you living in this state of perpetual stress, which leads to perpetual inflammation, which leads to every disease on the planet? So if using CBD is a way that you can calm and soothe yourself, and it becomes a part of a self-care practice, amazing. If you live in a state where marijuana is legal and it helps to soothe and calm you down, amazing. However, if you're at the opposite end of the spectrum and you smoke a joint and all of a sudden your blood pressure's off the charts, you're dizzy, you're queasy, it's not for you, just give it up. So do it with mindfulness. And if it's not treating you well, why are you mistreating yourself?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that's a great place to kind of begin wrapping things up. I wanted to ask you one thing though. I love the quote on your wall. I think I'm reading it. Good things come to those who hustle.
Yeah.
Do you know the rest of that, where that came from?
Well, this is a program that I run for entrepreneurs. And so we actually change our posters out. So we have a few of them. We have Love You Mean It, because I say that a lot. And we also have Show Up, Add Value, No Drama, which is a poster that hangs over me. And this is it's a 90-day business hustle. And it's like, okay, we're going to show up and we're going to do this for 90 days. We're going to see where your business ends up on the opposite side of that. So that is a program that I run.
I love that quote because it comes from President Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. He said, good things come to those who wait, but only those things left by those who hustle.
Oh, I love that. That's so great. See, you taught me the history of my own poster.
That's great. That's a wonderful quote. So it was great meeting you, Lindsey, and I really appreciate your time and hope to get to know you more as this industry continues to evolve, and good luck in everything you're doing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me today, and congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon and take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to today's show. Always brought to you by Magic Imuna Tea, available at packedwithlife.com. A mushroom tea that tastes great. Try it. Magic Imuna Tea, packedwithlife.com.